From Bethlehem to Calvary, The Initiations of Jesus by Alice Bailey. This is written in 1937. This book goes out with the earnest wish that its effect may be wholly constructive and result in a deepening of our belief in Christ and a broader recognition of the work which he came to initiate. Many years of work as an evangelist and as a teacher in the field of Christian principles, and a difficult cycle in which I faced the problem of my own relation to Christ and to Christianity, have brought me to two definitely clear and clean-cut recognitions. First, a recognition of the reality of the individuality of Christ and of his mission, and secondly, a recognition that the development of the Christ consciousness and the Christ nature in individual man and in the race as a whole carries with it solution of our world problem. Most heartily do I endorse the words of Arthur Weigel when he says, "Yet the Jesus of history, as distinct from the Jesus of theology, remains the way, the truth, and the life, and I am convinced that concentration upon the historic figure of our Lord and upon his teachings can alone inspire in this 20th century that fervent adherence and service which in former ages could be obtained from the average layman by the expounding of theological dogmas, the threat of hell, and the performance of elaborate rites and ceremonies. The kingdom of God is now in process of rapid formation, as all those with forward-seeing vision and a realization of the rapidly emerging beauty and divinity of man can bear testimony. We are passing through the transition period between the old age and the new, and the true mission of Christ, so deeply and frequently obscured by theological implications and disputations, embodies in itself the coming revelation. The development of humanity guarantees the recognition of Christ and his work and its participation consciously in the kingdom of God. The conscious evocation of the Christ life in the human heart and our rapid integration into the kingdom of God are the immediate tasks ahead, embodying our responsibility, opportunity, and destiny. In closing, I would like to offer my, all right, well, there's a part there where she's offered her gratitude to some people. So we'll go and move on to chapter 1. I think those words there, speak what a lot of us are feeling, even still today, as not much has necessarily changed in terms of Christianity, although we are starting to see more contemporary teachings slowly coming around. We don't dig into the true meanings, and if you're a seeker, then certainly this is a book you're going to want to read or listen to. Right? Chapter 1, introductory remarks on initiation. We are in process of passing from one religious age into another. The spiritual trends of today are steadily becoming more defined. The hearts of men have never been more open to spiritual impression than they are at this time, and the door into the very center of reality stands wide open. So right out the gate, that's important to know. There's opportunity here for all of us, and in this life that we're living right now. Paralleling, however, this significant development is a trend in the counter direction, and materialistic philosophies and doctrines of negation are becoming increasingly prevalent. To many, the whole question of the validity of the Christian religion remains to be determined. Claims are made that Christianity has failed, and that man does not need the gospel story with its implications of divinity and its urge to service and sacrifice. I don't need to say too much in a lot of these places because it all ends up coming out in the book. So essentially, anytime I have a question in early on, the answers are always going to follow relatively soon. So we don't need to ponder too much on each individual paragraph or line until we see that the questions have not been answered in the next one. So if we just move on a little bit, and if it doesn't come up, then we go back and we can dig a little deeper. But is the gospel story historically true? Is it a mystical tale of great beauty and of real teaching value, but nevertheless of no vital import to the intelligent man and woman of today, who pride themselves on their reasoning powers and upon their independence of ancient mental trammels and of old and dusty traditions? As to the perfection of the portrayed character of Christ, there is never any question. The enemies of Christianity admit his uniqueness, his basic profundity, and his understanding of the hearts of men. They recognize the intelligence of his ideas and sponsor them in their own philosophies. The developments which the carpenter of Nazareth brought about in the fabric of human life, his social and economic ideals, and the beauty of the civilization which could be founded upon the ethical teaching of the Sermon on the Mount are frequently emphasized by many who refuse to recognize his mission as an expression of divinity. From the rational point of view, the question as to the historical accuracy of his story remains as yet unsolved, though his teaching upon the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man is endorsed by the best minds of the race. Those who can move in the world of ideas, of faith, and of living experience testify to his divinity and to the fact that he can be approached. But such testimony is often passed over lightly as being mystical, futile, and incapable of proof. Individual belief is, after all, of no value to anyone except the believer himself, or as it tends to increase testimony until the total assumes such proportions that it eventually becomes proof. So you can kind of see what they're talking about there as people gather and have the same beliefs. That belief then becomes their truth, and their truth in actuality may not have any foundation in reality, because this would be part of the illusion or delusion, I suppose. To fall back upon the way of belief can be indicative of a living experience, but it can also be a form of self-hypnotism and a way of escape from the difficulties and problems of daily life. The effort to understand, to experiment, to experience, and to express what is known and believed is frequently too difficult for the majority, and they fall back upon a belief which is based upon the testimony of the trusted as the easiest way out of the impasse. So, as human beings, we want to believe what we're told. We have people that we've projected this level of trust on for one reason or another, and that's what we roll out with, and we stick to it wholeheartedly. But again, this is not the thinking man's way. There are others that other people trust, and they they move out on those fronts and those efforts and those practices because they trust them. So if we start to zoom out, which I think this book really does, is it helps us to look at things from a higher perspective or a more elevated position. You can see that, the people that surround one church are wholeheartedly given to that. You have another practice or another church and people are wholeheartedly given to that. That's because that's what came up in their lives. That's what they found to be, the best fit for them. But that does not mean that that's what Christ came here to demonstrate for us. And, we want the cold, hard truth. We want to worship in spirit and truth. And that's what our aim is, right? No matter what the ultimate truth is, we want that, and we will conform to whatever that is, right? That's the attitude that we're hoping that people open up to. The problem of religion and the problem of Orthodox Christianity are not one and the same thing. Much that we see around us today of unbelief and criticism and the negation of our so-called truths is based upon the fact that religion has been largely superseded by creed and doctrine has taken the place of living experience. It is this living experience which is the keynote of this book. With that being said, this living experience, there are people in the, alive today who have attained certain levels of consciousness that we do not understand down here in the lower three worlds. And eventually, we'll talk about how these things work out. But the people that we should be, potentially looking to trust are those who have the inner teachings through their experience, and it's become a part of their life. Just to be a good person is a prerequisite. To be born again is a prerequisite. This is just the beginning. We're just stepping foot into the teachings. Right? Perhaps another reason why humanity at this time believes so little or questions so unhappily what is believed may be the fact that theologians have attempted to lift Christianity out of its place in the scheme of things and have overlooked its position in the great continuity of divine revelation. They have endeavored to emphasize its uniqueness and to regard it as an isolated and entirely separated expression of spiritual religion. They thereby destroy its background, remove its foundations, and make it difficult for the steadily developing mind of man to accept its presentation. Yet St. Augustine tells us that that which is called the Christian religion existed among the ancients and never did not exist from the beginning of the human race until Christ came in the flesh, at which time the true religion, which already existed, began to be called Christianity. And that's from Religion in the Light of Theosophy. The wisdom which expresses relationship to God, the rules of the road which guide our wandering footsteps back to the Father's home, and the teaching which brings revelation have ever been the same down the ages and are identical with that which Christ taught. This body of inner truths and this wealth of divine knowledge have existed since time immemorial. It is the truth which Christ revealed, but he did more than this. He revealed in himself and through his life history what this wisdom and knowledge could do for man. He demonstrated in himself the full expression of divinity and then enjoined upon his disciples that they should go and do likewise. So if we look through the world religions, and the ancient religions, you see the Christian story over and over again. It's not something that can be argued. It's there. The holidays are there. These were under different names, and under, potentially, different messianic messengers. But the uniqueness of the gospel and Christ is that he came to fulfill the teaching and did it as the gospel story for real, and actually demonstrated this for us. So this gets deep, right? So now you're looking at two aspects to the Bible, that the Bible's been around for a long time, but then Christ did come and live the gospel story out to demonstrate it for humanity, so that we could also begin to follow in his footsteps. And he very much outlines how this goes if we start to look, right? In the continuity of Revelation, Christianity enters upon its cycle of expression under the same divine law which governs all manifestation, the law of cyclic appearances. This revelation passes through the phases of all form manifestation or appearance, then growth and development, and finally crystallization and a gradual but steady emphasis of the letter and the form, till the death of that form becomes inevitable and wise. There's a lot just in that by itself. All right, this is we may want to contemplate some of these lines much deeper. This is great seeds for contemplation here. But the Spirit remains to live on and take to itself new forms. The Spirit of Christ is undying as he lives to all eternity, so that which he incarnated to demonstrate must also live. The cell in the womb, the stage of littleness, the development of the child into the man, to all this he submitted himself and underwent all the processes which are the destiny of every son of God. Because of this submission, and because he learned obedience by the things which he suffered, that's from Hebrews, he could be trusted to reveal God to man, and, may we say it, the divine in man to God. So he became entrusted to reveal both God to man and the divine in man to God. For the gospel show us that continuously Christ called forth this recognition from the Father. The great continuity of Revelation is our most priceless possession, and into it the religion of Christ must and does fit. God has never left himself without witness, and he never will. The place of Christianity as the fulfillment of the past and as a stepping stone to the future is often forgotten. And this perhaps is one of the reasons why people speak of a failing Christianity and look forward to that spiritual revelation which seems so sorely needed. Unless this continuity is emphasized and the place of the Christian faith and the place of the Christian faith in it, revelation may come and pass unrecognized. Unless this continuity is emphasized and the place of the Christian faith in it, revelation may come and pass unrecognized. Yeah, we can't afford to miss, this in this life, right? We don't have much time, essentially. There is no time, essentially, but we don't have time to waste here. We're constantly selfishly running about for our own purposes. And never has it changed that what Christ came here to do needs to be understood by all those who are prepared to receive it. And we've become so self-reliant and mental at this point that we need more evidence, where we question more now, but the evidence does come. The function, the functioning of consciousness when it's observed, and our growth is the proof, and change and transmutation, transformation, ultimately transfiguration. These things are the proof in our own experience. So nobody's asking anybody to believe anything outright. There does need to be a bit, faith to get to the point where you are willing to move blindly for a little while. But at some point, this becomes your own experience, is what they're saying. This does become our own experience, and it may not be to the attainments of how the level of Christ in this life, but we are able to take steps, and our consciousness does expand, and there's no reason for the confusion when these things are happening, because this is the story, and this is how it goes for everyone, even though it may look very differently on the outer expression. And that's where the need to hold judgment and hold back from judging others needs to come into play. There was, we are told, in every ancient country having claims to civilization and esoteric doctrine, a system which was designated wisdom, and those who were devoted to its prosecution were first denominated sages or wise men. Pythagoras termed this system the gnosis, or knowledge of things that are. There's many esoteric schools out there teaching many different types of many different ways, many different types of teachings, all designed to help us progress faster than those around us, or those who are not prepared yet. So when the student's ready, the teacher appears. That's an old saying that stands true. So when you're ready, you will start to seek, and that's who we're hoping to find, those that are ready and start to hear these teachings of the ageless wisdom. Under the noble designation of wisdom, the ancient teachers, the sages of India, the Magians of Persia and Babylon, the seers and prophets of Israel, the hierophants of Egypt and Arabia, and the philosophers of Greece and the West, included all knowledge which they considered as essentially divine, classifying part as esoteric and the remainder as exterior. So again, we have the teachings that were given to the multitude, and we have the teachings that are given to the disciple. And are we comfortable with the teachings of the multitude, or do we want the inner teaching? And are we ready for the inner teaching? We know much of the exoteric teaching. Orthodox and theological Christianity is founded on it, as are all Orthodox formulations of the great religions. When, however, the inner wisdom teaching is forgotten and the esoteric side is ignored, then the spirit and the living experimental experience disappear. We have been occupied with the details of the outer form of the faith and have sadly forgotten the inner meaning, which carries life and salvation to the individual and also to humanity. We have been busy fighting over the non-essentials of traditional interpretation and have omitted to teach the secret and the technique of the Christian life. We have overemphasized the doctrinal and dogmatic aspects and have deified the letter, whilst all the time the soul of man was crying out for the spirit of life, which the letter veiled. We have agonized over the historical aspect of the gospel narrative, over the time element, and over the verbal accuracy of the many translations, while failing to see the real magnificence of Christ's accomplishment and the significant teaching it holds for the individual and for the race. The drama of his life and its practical application to the lives of his followers have been lost to sight, and undue importance attached to certain phrases which he supposed to have uttered, whilst that which he expressed in his life and the relationships which he emphasized and regarded as implicit in his revelation have been totally ignored. I think it's pretty easy to see once we start to wake up to, or if we go to church and we go to Bible study, or if nothing wrong with church, the fraternity and all of that is fellowship, all that's great, but that's not where our we're supposed to stop, right? We need to keep going and keep going. And when this they say when the soul is awakened to man down here, that's when this starts to become of interest, and we question what we're looking at. We question our conditioning, and that's when we move out to find what is real at that point. And inevitably, it is, it's true that if you seek, you shall find. And the next thing you need to hear is always right where you are. We have fought over the historical Christ, and thus fighting have lost sight of his message of love to all beings. Man, you can't slide past that without recognizing that, his message of love to all beings. Are we loving all beings yet? Is it in our person that we have come to terms and forgiven and become to recognize the brotherhood of humanity and simply love them for what they are? And then that doesn't mean you have to agree with everything, but we love the whole. I'll just leave it there. We begin to love the whole and recognize it as a whole instead of each person, because we don't necessarily know what we're looking at in each person until we dive deep into the teachings that are available in science and physics and quantum physics and the ancient. We need to have a foundation, and the ageless wisdom does more than provide that foundation. It actually provides a lot of the science, and even though this it's older, we can bounce off what science has accomplished recently and find out that the spiritual teachings are always ahead of the rest of the world. They're always ahead. It's unbelievable. Right? You can fit quantum into this stuff and the ancient stuff, and it still all makes sense. So fanatics quarrel over his words and fail to remember that he was the Word made flesh. We argue about the virgin birth of the Christ and forget the truth which the incarnation is intended to teach. Evelyn Underhill points out in her most valuable book, Mysticism, that the incarnation, which is for popular Christianity synonymous with the historical birth and earthly life of Christ, is for the mystic not only this, but also a perpetual cosmic and personal process. I think at some point, as we're reading and studying the Bible, we start to see our life in it. And that's really what I would say is the beginning. Once you see that this is starting to play out in your life, not that you have to live, not that we're going to live the same exact life as Christ did. That's not possible. But these aspects play out and we recognize that. And then you can begin to claim sovereignty at that point. And I want to say that's hugely important, that we recognize our direct connection. There's no need to have a pass through in any way, shape, or form. And we can stand and say, I am an individual, I am, and we don't need to recognize anybody else as we can see ourselves equal, and that we're on the path, and we recognize that we're all brothers and sisters. How about that? Scholars spend their lives in proving that the whole story is only a myth. It should, however, be pointed out that a myth is the summarized belief and knowledge of the past handed down to us for our guidance in forming the foundation of a newer revelation, and that it is a stepping stone to the next truth. A myth is a valid and proven truth with bridges, step by step, the gap between the past gained knowledge, the present formulated truth, and the infinite and divine possibilities of the future. The ancient myths and the old mysteries give us a sequential presentation of the divine message as it went forth from God in response to the need of man down the ages. The truth of one age becomes the myth of the next, but its significance and its reality remain untouched and require only reinterpretation in the present. We are free to choose and to reject, but let us see to it that we choose with eyes opened by the sagacity and wisdom, which are the hallmark of those who have penetrated a considerable way along the path of return. There is life and truth and vitality in the gospel story yet to be reapplied by us. There is dynamic and divinity in the message of Jesus. Certainly. Christianity is, for us today, a culminating religion. It is the greatest of the latter divine revelations. Much of it, since its inception 2,000 years ago, has come to be regarded as myth, and the clear outlines of the story have dimmed and have come frequently to be regarded as symbolic in their nature. Yet behind symbol and myth stands reality, an essential, dramatic, and practical truth. Our attention has been engrossed by the symbol and by the outer form, whilst the meaning has remained obscured and fails sufficiently to affect our lives. In our myopic study of the letter, we have lost the significance of the word itself. We need to get behind the symbol to that which it embodies and to shift our attention away from the world of outer forms to the inner realities. cursor link points this out in these words. The process of shifting levels from the letter to the inner meaning in the matter of spiritual attitudes can be clearly set forth by one single proposition. It consists in seeing through the phenomenon. Every living phenomenon is, first and last, a symbol, for the essence of life is meaning. But every symbol, which is the ultimate expression of a state of consciousness, is in itself transparent for another deeper one, and so on into eternity. For all things in the sense connection of life are inwardly connected, and their depths have their roots in God. Therefore, no spiritual form can ever be an ultimate expression. Every meaning, when it has been penetrated, becomes automatically a mere letter of expression of a deeper one, and herewith the old phenomenon takes on the new and different meaning. Thus, Catholicism, Protestantism, Greek Catholic, Islamism, and Buddhistic religiousness can, in principle, continue on the plane of this life what they were and yet signifies something entirely new. What they were and signify something entirely new. Right. So the teachings kind of keep getting updated. Right? And then there's also that axiom, and the law of correspondences, where everything can be seen as above and so below, as within, so without. And I want to say, these symbols start to become realized, if I'm not mistaken, as we get onto the mental plane. So, and that's coming up here later on in the book. So I'm not going to dig into, we're going to keep it light. But, what I guess a preface to this would be, for Christians who are, super embedded in that, in what they've been told, we're asking that you keep an open mind and consider that maybe this goes deeper, and maybe people do know. Maybe there are some people in their own experience that have found out, not that maybe they have. And it's very beautiful. And this is the good news, because this is our story as well. It's the hero's journey. And, this is our path of return. We just have to commit. So I have so many things that come to mind. It's hard because people's churches would tell them, no, this is satanic, or this is, of the devil, or man, we need to think for ourselves for a minute and stand for ourselves and recognize that maybe, just maybe, you have evolved past those people who say those things, including our friends and family. Not maybe, at that point you have. I'm just being gentle there a little bit. All right. I've studied, I was an intelligence analyst, or I'd say my education is intelligence analysis. And I worked for the government, and what they taught me was how to think deeply, critical thinking, and how to see through things a little bit. And then my experience allowed me to see a lot that to know enough that there's more to this, I guess you could say. And then I knew at some point when I first picked up the Bhagavad Gita to read it out of curiosity, after having studied the Bible for a long time, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita and the story of Krishna and Arjuna, and I knew in that very moment that there's somebody in India reading the Bhagavad Gita, experiencing the same emotional states and connectivity as I was, or anybody else reading the Bible. So then, what does that mean? Then the quest comes to find out which teaching is, most appropriate for this time. What's the most current teaching in the evolution, and as we progress on, where are the deepest teachings now? We have to be hungry. We're hungry for that. We have to, if we can handle it, we want to know, and so we can move on and help, right, and grow. Well, now we're digging into it. In my experience, this is the deepest teachings that, not necessarily this book. This is an introductory book to the deepest teachings that I think are probably available to man at this time for a little while. But anyway, the only excuse for this book is that it is an attempt to penetrate to that deeper meaning underlying the great events in the life of Christ, and to bring into renewed life and interest the weakening aspiration of the Christian. If it can be shown that the story revealed in the Gospels is not only an application to that divine figure which dwelt for a time among men, but that it has also a practical significance and meaning for the civilized man today, then there will be some objective gained and some service and help rendered. It is possible that today, owing to our more advanced evolution and the ability to express ourselves through more finely developed shades of consciousness, we can appropriate the teaching with a clearer vision and a wiser use of the indicated lesson. And yeah, that's the goal. We want we want to keep this pushing on the bound, the edges of this. We want this to progress. This great myth belongs to us. For let us be courageous and use this word in its true and right connotation. A myth is capable of becoming a fact in the experience of an individual man, for a myth is a fact which can be proven. Upon the myths we take our stand, but we must seek to reinterpret them in the light of the present. Through self-initiated experiment, we can prove their validity. Through experience, we can establish them as governing forces in our lives. And through their expression, we can demonstrate their truth to others. This is the theme of this book, dealing as it does with the facts of the gospel story, that fivefold sequential myth, which teaches us the revelation of divinity in the person of Jesus Christ, and which remains eternally truth in the cosmic sense, in the historical sense, and in its practical application to the individual. This myth divides itself into 5 great episodes. The first is the birth at Bethlehem. The second, the baptism in the Jordan. Third is the transfiguration on the Mount Carmel. 4 is the crucifixion on Mount Golgotha. And 5 is the resurrection and ascension. So, if we haven't to this point broken the story up and looked at it in these sections like this, the birth, the baptism, the transfiguration, crucifixion, and resurrection and ascension, then maybe we missed something, right? And maybe this is right on time to kind of get us, kick kick us on the path, a little further down the path, because this is what happens in us. This is our story, not necessarily, obviously not exact, in a different outer expression. All right. But Christ is watching your story too. So there's that right now. Just saying. Their significance for us and their interpretation in modern terms is our task. A point of crisis and of culmination has been reached in the story of man, and man owes this to the influence of Christianity. As a member of the human family, he has reached a level of integration known in the past, except in the case of a select few in every nation. He is, as the psychologists have indicated, a sum total of physical organisms, of vital force, of physical states or emotional conditions, and of mental or thought reactions. So they're saying that's essentially what we are there. Now this goes way deeper, so just hold on, just absorb this. He is now ready to have indicated to him his next transition. So we're saying that humanity has reached a certain point in evolution that in the past was not reached. We're at that point now, and now we are able to now know this gospel story for what the deeper teachings are. And this is our stepping off point. Now, it was demonstrated 2,000 years ago. That doesn't mean it was understood. Right? Obviously, it was not. And obviously, not many were capable of understanding it. And we're just now getting to the point where we can. And this is interesting because we need to understand it, not just for the story. We need to understand how the science of this plays in and the steps required and what is actually happening, right? Because this is new. This is a transition for us. So we're ready for the next transition, development, or unfolding. Of this we are expectant, standing in readiness to take advantage of the opportunity. The door into a world of higher being and consciousness stands wide open. The way into the kingdom of God has been clearly pointed out. Many in the past have passed into that kingdom and awakened there to a world of being and of understanding, which is to the multitude a sealed mystery. So right then and there, we're talking about people do not know. We do not know. We don't know. Don't listen to anybody when they're trying to tell you anything. Ultimately, unless you discern that they are, more evolved than you and have walked further on the path, and that they're pointing the way out for you, and it's working without any rabbit holes that need to be gone down, right? The way into the kingdom of God is clearly pointed out. Many in the past have passed into that kingdom and awakened there to a world of being and of understanding, which is to the multitude a sealed mystery. The glory of the present moment lies in the fact that many thousands stand thus prepared and, given the needed instructions, could be initiated into the mysteries of God. A new unfoldment in consciousness is now possible. A new goal has arisen and governs the intentions of many. We are, as a race, definitely on our way towards some new knowledge, some fresh recognitions, and some deeper world of values. What happens on the outer plane of experience is indicative of a similar happening in a more subtle world of meaning. For this, we must prepare. It's not something that can be given by another human being. It has to be worked for. Nothing comes easy that's worthwhile. We've been on a journey for a long time. This is nothing new. How many lives have we lived that we've toiled and suffered and worked with our hands? So many sages have said, why aren't you ready to move on yet? Move on. let's move on. We have seen that the Christian revelation unified in itself teachings of the past. This Christ himself pointed out when he said, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." He embodied all the past and revealed the highest possibility to man. He revealed the highest possibility to us of what we can be and will be, so long as we, evolve. And and that's a slippery slope because it's so easy to not evolve. The left-hand path is easier to stay on. The razor's edge path is much more difficult, and it requires a lot more awareness of ourselves and what we're doing and how. It's not what we think, and we don't need to go in. It's just not what we think. Most things are not what we think. At some point, I knew that every thought that I ever had in my whole life for the first 40 couple of years was absolutely wrong. Now, was that experience? That's the experience that was required. Sure. Was any of it real or true? I don't know. Everything I had believed or thought was wrong for a very long time, and that's why we want to share these gems that are available to us. So the words of Dr. Gurdjieff, in The Freedom and the Spirit, maybe that's Hebrew. Throw light on this. The Christian revelation is universal, and everything analogous to it in other religions is simply a part of that revelation. Christianity is not a religion of the same order as the others. It is, as said, the religion of religions. What does it matter if within Christianity, supposedly so different from other faiths, there is nothing original at all apart from the coming of the Christ and his personality? Is it not precisely in this particular that the hope of all religions is fulfilled? So the story's not different. It's the fact that Christ came and demonstrated it on the physical plane on earth for us, which makes it, and he fulfilled the gospel story. Right? Come on, this is amazing. Each great period of time and each world cycle will, through the loving kindness of God, its religion of religions, synthesizing all the past revelations and indicating the future hope. The world expectancy today shows that we stand on the verge of a new revelation. It will be a revelation which will in no way negate our divine spiritual heritage, but will add the clear vision of the future to the wonder of the past. It will express what is divine, but has been hitherto unrevealed. It is therefore possible that an understanding of some of the deeper significances of the gospel story may enable the modern seeker to grasp the wider synthesis. Synthesis being the key to seeing how all the world religions fit into Christianity and how what's happening in the present with science and how we've evolved for over the last 2,000 years is helping us move on to the next revelation now. So in a sense, all those that grew up in a church and are like, nah, I have a connection with God. You're right. But listen, we need the foundation in order to synthesize the next revelation that will satisfy our evolutionary place. Right? So we do need to get caught up, right? So just because we bypass spirituality and you say, no, I don't want to study this world religion. I don't want to this, or I've looked at all of these things. We need to build in the foundation. And that's kind of what these books do. Not kind of, that's what they do. Right. So synthesis. And then to be prepared for the next revelation, the next unfolding. We want to stay as being the pioneers of the human race. It's very easy to fall behind and get stagnant and just get lazy. That's not what we're here for. Some of these deeper implications were touched upon in a book published many years ago entitled The Crisis of the Christ by that veteran Christian, Dr. Campbell Morgan, taking the 5 major episodes in the life of the Savior around which the entire gospel narrative is built. He gave them a wide and general application, leaving one with the realization that Christ had not only passed through these dramatic experiences, indeed and in truth, but had left us with the definite command that we should follow his steps. From 1 Peter. Is it not possible that these great facts in the experience of Christ, these 5 personalized aspects of the universal myth, may have for us as individuals more than a historical and personal interest? Is it not possible that they may embody some experience and some initiated undertaking through which many Christians may now pass and thus obey his injunction to enter into new life? Must we not all be born again, baptized into the Spirit, and transfigured on the mountaintop of living experience? Does not the crucifixion lie ahead for many of us, leading on to the resurrection and the ascension? And is it not also possible that we have interpreted these words in too narrow a sense, with too sentimental and ordinary implications, whereas they may indicate to those who are ready a special way and a more rapid following in the footsteps of the Son of God? This is one of the points which concern us and with which this book will attempt to deal. If this more intensive meaning can be found, and if the drama of the Gospels can become in some peculiar way the drama of those souls who are ready, then we shall see the resurrection of the essentials of Christianity and the revivifying of the form which is so rapidly crystallizing. That revivifying of the form which is so rapidly crystallizing would be fantastic to bring new life to this whole event. There's so many Christians, right? And they're such, they're all good people. They're all us, and they're all our brothers and sisters. How great would it be if we all started to, learn the deeper teaching, not the teaching of the multitude or the outer court, but the inner teachings, the esoteric teachings. All right. Let's see how long I've been going here. I think we can go ahead and stop there for today. And then we'll pick this back up again tomorrow. And I'll just start putting these out for whoever wants to listen. All right, everybody. Thank you. And we'll get back at it tomorrow. Have a good day. Thanks.